Why is magic not recognized? Like, if it's all awesome and every type of incredible in the world, like we've been talking about on this channel, why does nobody recognize it? Why does nobody really talk about it outside of, in subcultural ways or small groups of people that are brave enough to dig into it? Or, maybe people do like it, but they just don't talk about it in public. Most of all, why does the world not recognize it? I've been trying to answer this question my entire life. I've dedicated over 25 years now to trying to rectify this situation. But there's a lot of reasons. I think maybe good and bad. The most obvious reason is it sounds goofy, okay? Personally, for a long time, I struggled with that. I wanted to come up with a new word. I wanted to make it more respectable. And I tried that for many years, and then I just gave up on that because I realized I was just trying to please people. I was trying to, get people to like me, essentially, or like the tradition. And but more than that, I realized if I called it something more scientific sounding, like, the best that anyone's ever come up with is neurolinguistic programming, which is a subset of magic. It's not the whole thing, although it is interesting. It just wouldn't be the same. And one of the reasons is that just the word magic itself rattles people. It just by its existence shakes up their idea of what the world is. Just that it's that initial spark that people get when it, probably, maybe you, definitely me, when somebody first comes across this term, they're probably dismissive, right? It's like, okay, right, magic, what is this, Renaissance fair? Like, okay, did you not grow up? Or do you think Dungeons and Dragons is real? Like, is this a joke? Like, come on. And I had that response too. The first time I came across it, I was just like, give me a break. And then I was looking at kind of like airbrush New Age books, and I was just like rolling my eyes out of my head when I was like 15, 16. But then when I started to actually, something about it, even though I reacted to it negatively, something about it wouldn't let me go. And I think part of it was that it kind of got under my skin just by like the brazenness of using the word. And it was just so like offensive to my idea of the world. It kind of got under my skin and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I went back and started looking at it more carefully and looking at some of the older texts, some of the more authoritative texts, things like The Golden Bow by James Frazier, things like the book The Occult by Colin Wilson, some of the great writers and popularizers of the topic in the past. And suddenly I realized that this was something very real. It was something perhaps even critical for the evolution of the human race. Not in a New Age way, but just in the sense of maybe there are techniques for becoming fully human, right? I actually hate the word spirituality. It's like, what am I trying to become, Casper the Friendly Ghost? I know this is goofy. I'd love to say, I'm into humanity. I want to become more human. I want to become more of a person, totally access my full potential. And I'd always wanted that. And I think I'm sure want that, or you wouldn't be watching this. But when I came across magic, I realized maybe there are techniques for this, and they've just been kind of hidden and kind of put off. It's like when you see something in your peripheral vision, when something's kind of over here, you're aware of it, but not really, but it's there, it's nagging at you, and eventually maybe it's actually having more of an effect than it's something you were focusing on directly. After all, that's the principle that stage magic is based on. So when I really looked at this, I realized the fact that there is this truly occult tradition, occult meaning hidden, of ideas and techniques and history that was way more interesting than anything they were teaching me in school, and that promised way more interesting things than anything that they were telling me at the time that I could be as an adult, and that seemed to promise not just success and happiness, but something deeper than that, meaning, creative inspiration, the ability to get to the core, the deep meaning of what this is all about, but in a way that I controlled, not in a way that I was just accepting a dogma from a religion or something like that, like an actual practice that I could do. I was hooked from there. It was just, and the fact that it had been hidden made it all the more fascinating, right? I mean, that's pretty straightforward. That's basic marketing, right? Tell people that they're not supposed to know something and that they're going to want to know it. So part of me thinks that maybe it hasn't been recognized for that reason, so that people can have that sense of discovery and thrill when they do find it. And there's a deeper level of that too, which is that magic requires a lot of bravery. It requires willpower in the truest sense. And in the classic Rosicrucian phrase, to be a magician, you must know, will, dare, and keep silent. And the key there is to dare, right? It takes a lot of courage and bravery to jump into something that your culture tells you isn't even real. And maybe there's even consequences for being into. Maybe people are going to look at you funny. You have to have that bravery. I think there's something to making the first encounter with it, the first step, a little scary. Not the whole thing, because there's so much work to be done, but there's something to that of making people really work for it to show that they really want it. Now, I've spent my whole life telling people about Magick and making it easier for them, to making it easier to find information. The work is still hard. You still have to do the work. But making it kind of like turning the lights on a little bit and putting the signposts up and sweeping up and showing people where it is if they have the daring to start. And just trying to represent it accurately without, with no nonsense. Because the tradition is tough enough, it's complicated enough, and it's daunting enough that I don't think there's any reason to make it, more difficult or scary or confusing than it actually is. The thing itself is enough of an undertaking without trying to hide it. So, as Lon Duquette once said, there are no real secrets in magic. The secrets hide themselves. And I think that's a very wise comment. So, is magic ever going to be recognized by the world? I don't know. I mean, I think that some versions of it get recognized, and more now. I think that, for instance, people love the idea of mindfulness. In the 80s, they loved the idea of neurolinguistic programming. You don't hear about that as much anymore, although it certainly had an impact. People love the idea of, if you say Buddhism, all of a sudden it's, they love it. Magic is not Buddhism, but it includes some Buddhist techniques, and they're not very different paths. But when you hit it straight on and you just say magic, you'd say tarot, astrology, all that. But when you go for the pure occult, people get a little wiggy. But to be completely honest, that's changed a lot even in my life. In the last 25 years, when I first started, nobody was into this. And I had to look far and wide for groups to join, and it was hard to find anyone. I eventually ended up, in New York City studying under Genesis George, who was very vocal in public. But, even then, I knew maybe 4 people max who were into it, and of those, very few people were seriously practicing. Now we're in a situation where magic is trendy. It's trendy in the art world. It's trendier in music beyond, it used to be just Crowley on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and all of that, and Led Zeppelin and all of that. But now I think there's a deeper understanding of the history and the tradition, and you see people, talking about Marjorie Cameron and Jack Parsons and Gurdjieff and all this stuff, and it's very trendy in the art world. But still, even then, I always wonder how many people are actually sincerely practicing. But that said, I think that there's more sincere interest in this topic than certainly any other time in my lifetime. I wasn't alive in the 60s and the 70s. Maybe it was more in the early 70s and the late 60s. It's very possible. But I wasn't alive then, so I don't know firsthand. But one thing that is different now is that people have access to the information on the internet. And that is one thing that has massively changed. That's never been possible. So now is the first time in history that you have, if you want to get into this material, it's all there. I mean, yes, you can take classes on magic.me. I lay it all out perfectly, step by step. It's all given to you and just, wrapped up nicely for you so you can just get straight to it. But you don't necessarily need to do that. You can read on your own. You can research online on your own. There's a billion resources now for learning about this stuff in your own way. And so the only thing that's holding you back at this point is you, in terms of, whether you're going to dedicate yourself to this. If you're not, don't. Okay, I'll be the first one to say to you, if you're just idly curious, if you just wonder if this is real, and you're not ready to really commit yourself to it, then don't start, right? I certainly don't need more students. We don't need more halfway magic practitioners. We really don't, okay? Because it is a hard path and it is a lifelong path. So I'll be the first person to try and scare you away. But if you are serious, then I'm serious about helping. And this is kind of one of the things I'm doing in this life, apparently. So So will magic ever be recognized? You know what? Maybe so. I think that people are looking around now. There's so much chaos in the world, particularly after the pandemic. It's kind of like, well, what else you got? I mean, like, what else is actually working? One of the great things about magic is it's not just that it works, it's that it works when nothing else is working. Throughout human history, magic has been people's fallback technique, their go-to when everything falls apart. And it always works the same, and it never changes, and it's always there for you. So I think for that reason, there's a ton more interest in magic, and I celebrate that. I'm happy to interact with that. I'm happy to have been a part of that, one of many people, and it's an exciting time. So, will magic be recognized? It's kind of up to you. So, will it be recognized for you in your own life? That's up to you. Will you be part of bringing it to a wider audience? That's up to you. Should you be? That's also up to you. One way or another, I'm happy to be here, and check out magick.me, my school for magic meditation and mysticism, where you can learn all about this, and I will see you in class.